Good evening, everyone. First, I would like to thank you all for being here this evening. My name is Dakota Hancock, as many of you know, so thank you for being here for my speech. First and foremost, due to the sensitive nature of this speech, specifically those in regards to the Christian faith, this is going to be a bit of a disclaimer. In no way, shape, or form is this meant to offend anyone of that particular faith. This is simply an analysis of a film that kind of revolves around that. So this week will be on a film called The Witch, a New England Folktale, as debuted by Robert Eggers in 2015. A bit of background on this film. It surrounds a family who is shunned from their Puritan community in 1630s America. The family baby disappears, which results in a lot of arguments, accusations, violence, and the eventual death of most of the family. Moving forward, thematically, this will explain the relationship between religion and misogyny as the roots of American culture, laying out historical prominence of misogyny even in the early days of American society. Here, The Witch will invite the audience to examine the world in 2015 and determine how much or how little has actually changed since then. I am going to review this film in thematic perspectives, two different ones. To clarify, it was not Eggers' intent on making it Christian critique, whereas it was meant to be just a Puritan folktale, even reflected in the actual title of the film. Eggers goes on to even say, when you present these things without intention, feminism rises to the top. So my deeper critiques are actually going to come from a little bit deeper, more meta-textual levels. On the metatextual level, it is a biting critique of Puritanism, misogyny, and an examination of the relationship between the two in early American culture. My intent is to contextualize and examine The Witch as a Puritan folktale, and then examine the ways in which it subverts itself and criticizes Christianity and the institution it brings in misogyny. Before I go into the textual and subtextual levels of the film itself, I would like to make a couple of connections between Christianity and misogyny. There are two main points I'm going to make. First is going to be the Christian God. The Christian God is seen as an all-powerful male being. He's very kind, considerate, and just general a god. You see feminine and female divinity in other religions, however, not in Christianity. Secondly, the first prominent character who is female in the Bible is Eve. However, Eve is not seen in the same light as God. Eve is seen as the sole reason for the downfall of humankind. Alan S. Moll, in the Journal of Psychohistory, goes so far as to say that it's not the killing of Abel by Cain that is the downfall of humankind, but it is the agency of Eve and her decision between what is good and what is evil. The Witch can be broken down into textual theme of Puritan misogyny through Christian dogma and biblical illusion and fear-mongering. Witches and Satan in this film are very real. More often than not, the power between these witches and Satan are shown through sexual, feminine characters. Uncoincidentally, the conflict in the film also begins with Thomasin's coming of age or her sexual maturity. As a folktale, oppression of women can be seen with Thomasin and her family. Women at the time were forced into doing all the chores, cooking and cleaning, while also maintaining house and home, things to that effect. This behavior was carried into America by Puritans, and it set the tone for America going forward. Next, I'd like to examine the film on the textual levels. I do have two examples for that one. The first one is going to be Catherine, a mother, and Thomasin, her older daughter. There is a clear disdain for Thomasin through Catherine. A lot of this can probably stem from jealousy from her youth, her beauty, and definitely for the favor in the eyes of William, the patriarchal father of the film. There is an incident in this film regarding a silver cup. That silver cup did come from England by Catherine's father, so obviously it did mean a lot to Catherine. However, it is stolen and it disappears, and it is done by William, and while he can absolve Thomasin of blame, he chooses not to until the end. There is another thing against the agency that Thomasin has over her own life in regards to the family choosing to maybe send her away to ensure the survival of the family without so much of thinking of how Thomasin feels about this. Here she shows her lack of agency despite being old enough to recognize this mistreatment. My next example on the textual level is Caleb, brother to Thomasin's sister. Here there is deep incestual feelings for his sister. So through the lens of Puritan propaganda, this can be seen as Thomasin tempting her brother with her own peaking sexuality. This can be backed up by Caleb's later abduction by a seductive witch in the woods. This does lead to his possession of a demon, and later on, death. This also gives a clear connection with his feelings for Thomasin. This can also be seen as a cautionary warning against feminine sexuality. It is also worth noting that he does cough up an apple with a bite in it. This is actually an allusion to the story of Adam and Eve, reinforcing women as the root cause of mankind's downfall. We could easily replace Thomasin with Eve and Black Phillip, the avatar for Satan in the film, as the serpent. Next, I would like to explore the film on a subtextual level. When viewed metatextually, there are two clear ways the witch subverts this otherwise deeply misogynistic framing. First and foremost would be William's downfall. He is the very deeply patriarchal and religious figurehead who kind of falls victim to pride and hypocrisy throughout the film. First, we see his first act of pride in the shunning which drives him from society. And then we see pride throughout the film where he refuses to listen to his family's woes and their desires to move back to society, and Catherine's woes for wanting to move back to England. Later on, we see hypocrisy rear its ugly head when he decides to go ahead and sell the cup, but allow Thomasin to take the blame. And then he does this until the very last second. Later on, we see hypocrisy again when he lies and decides to justify it, even while scouring his own family for sin. Hypocrisy does play a vital role in rising tension that weakens family and leads to their ultimate demise. Here in this film, if Thomasin is a reflection of Puritan worldview, William represents the folly of Puritan dogmatic adherence to religious doctrine, hypocrisy, and patriarchy. Subtextual continued, we're going to go ahead and discuss that the witch subverts Puritan folktale themes by ultimately making Thomasin, a female, the protagonist. At first, she plays the passive victim very well. She's very weak, does not fight for herself. She allows herself to be villainized by her own family throughout the film. However, despite all of this, she is the last one standing at the very end. At the very end, she is offered a pact by Black Phillip or Satan to live deliciously, and she accepts. This is the first major contrast on the textual and metatextual feelings throughout the film. On a textual Puritan lens, this is a horrible warning against the evils of women and going against the religious Puritan status quo at the time. Metatextually, this ending represents female agency and individual freedom. The ending actually kind of reforms itself then into a story of a young woman's liberation and metaphorical dismantling of misogyny and religious oppression. So in conclusion here, The Witch is a film that functions both as a reflection and biting modern critique of Christian culture and its reinforcement of misogyny, creating a portrait of Puritan America and the role that society in particular played in shaping the culture we live in today. Going based on that, we can see that not much has really changed since then. Misogyny still exists. There's still a lot less female leaders in the world today than I would probably like. There is the existence of the glass ceiling in the job market these days. Women aren't taken as seriously as men still. However, I believe in order to dismantle that misogyny, we must first recognize it in ourselves and in others. To conclude, again, The Witch, through textual and subtextual thematic arts, uniquely depicts the historically symbiotic relationship between Christianity and misogyny in a way that is resonant and resourceful to a modern audience. Are there any questions?
Yeah, where can I stream this movie?
You can probably find the movie on YouTube. There is a full version on YouTube. I think it's like $3.99. I believe it's on Netflix.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Thank you for coming to my speech.